Love the new voice.
That's the first time I've heard it.
Really? Yeah, it's a new add-on this week. And I'm like, really? We have to have that? Anyway. Well, Vanessa, let's get right into our conversation today. It's one that we haven't really talked about on my Core Connections podcast, and I'm really excited to have you, just open everyone's eyes to the conversation that is around menopause, because at some point, women, even our younger women listening, I have a lot of moms listening, even if you're like, oh, menopause sounds so far away, it's probably may or may not be as far away as you think it is. And I know there are so many amazing things that we can do to help that menopausal, time in women's life. So Vanessa, I'm so excited to welcome you. So can you share with us just a little bit more about you, what turned you on to like, I want to create a business and really help share with women how to make menopause easier?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, first of all, Erica, for having me. This is super exciting. I think it's really important for women who are in the slightly younger demographic to really have a perspective on what's going to happen to their bodies, because the reason all of this is broken is we don't talk enough about it. And so that's really what I'm here to do today, is to talk about it, to educate women so that they know what to expect. Because when I started this whole transition, I didn't know what to expect. I will be 50 next year. And about 6 years ago, I had a period that lasted for 3 weeks. And I freaked out. I thought I had cancer. There wasn't a lot of good information on the interwebs at that point in time, and we always think, oh yeah, Google knows everything, right? But it doesn't, because if we're not talking about it and educating the algorithm, then the algorithm doesn't know either, right? It has to come from human understanding. And what I learned in that process was that, first of all, a 3-week period at 44 is it's not common, but it's not rare either. Your periods start to become irregular in your 40s for most women. And I realized that after talking to my doctor that no, I didn't have cancer. I had perimenopause, but that was a word I didn't even know. She had to educate me on that. And when I found that out, and she gave me some resources that were reputable resources to go and look into it, I realized that there just wasn't a lot of information that your average woman was going to find that was going to be reputable, credible, informative, without sort of like talking over your head in medical speak, which I can't stand. And I decided that I wanted to do something about it because I had significant pain around this perimenopausal transition. And I knew if I was, other women probably were too. And when I started doing the research into that, I found out, yes, women are absolutely unprepared for what perimenopause can do to their lives. So that's why I'm here.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I talk to and work with a lot of women that are going through perimenopause and then obviously after menopause. And it's like, I mean, I totally relate to you because I talk so much about deep core and pelvic floor. And it's just like, if we don't talk about this stuff, women don't know. And you hit the nail on the head. Like, you can no longer just go and search for information for some reasons I won't talk about right now, but for other reasons like the algorithm stuff, right? And it is harder to find the information that you're looking for, especially if you are a woman, which for those listening who want to do things more on the holistic, natural side as much as possible. And so you have to kind of know where to go and kind of what you're even looking for to start with. And if you don't even know what you're looking for, how do you know where to go, right?
Exactly. You don't know where to go, and you don't even know what questions you should be typing in to ask about because nobody talks about this stuff. I mean, I think the conversation in the last 1.5 to 2 years has started to see a shift. There were some articles recently in the New York Times about menopause and perimenopause. There was a conversation on NPR recently. A couple of celebrities who are pretty well known have started talking about it publicly. And that's what it's going to take, is women talking about it in an open forum, or at least with each other, about what is happening to them, so that we all have this sort of collective understanding of what perimenopause and menopause is. Because if we don't have a fundamental understanding, you're not even going to know what questions to ask or where to start.
Yeah. Okay. So that leads me into the big question I want to start with. And that is like, why the current approach to menopause is fundamentally broken and what can we do about it? I'm really excited to have you talk about this.
And you know what, I can talk about this all day long.
I'm sure you can.
because there's so much wrong. But my company's name is MenoLabs. We have sort of a three-pronged approach. We believe that the conversation and therefore the education around menopause for the everyday woman is broken. We believe that the research into medical solutions for women are broken. And we believe that the way that women can address these with natural solutions and technology to help her are broken. And so we have this sort of three-pronged approach, three kinds of different tactics that we're engaging in on a daily basis to try to change for the better. So the first thing is, the medical community looks at women and they say we are too variable to study. And this has been pretty, the kind of thing that has happened for the last, few hundred years. We didn't even have menopause as a research-funded subject of investigation until 2016. And the funding around menopause research is still fundamentally broken. They still require you at the National Institute of Health, which is the major granting organization for research into this kind of stuff. They still require that you have men in your study about menopause, which is completely...
Wait. How does that work? How does that work? And I, okay, you brought up something we could, I'm sure, go down a deep rabbit hole with this, but I've noticed that in research too. They use a lot of men in studies because women have too many variables, especially if it has something to do at all where a cycle could mess up a study. But okay, how can they put men in a study about cycles and menopause? Like, I don't even understand the thought process behind
It's a good question, right? I think it's because they feel they need a control group. But I think I would argue, and I'm not a researcher, okay? I am a lay person coming into this as a woman who needed to solve problems for herself and realized there was a bigger issue. So this is my supposition, is that they think of men as their control group. And what I think we ought to be doing is taking a look at women who have more normal cycles in their early 30s, right? Women whose estrogen is not fluctuating as wildly as our control group. And I think that the reason we haven't done this in the past is because we haven't had the technology and we haven't understood how to use the technology as it's developing to really dig into what makes a woman variable. How do these things differ from woman to woman? And it does differ from woman to woman. You will never talk to any two women at the same, dinner party and have them describe the exact same childbirth experience, the exact same period experience, the exact same menopause experience. It's never going to happen because we are variable. But I think that there is a way, and this is what we do at MenoLabs, to use technology as it exists today to our advantage. So we've created an app, it's called MenoLife, where women can track their symptoms, can track the kinds of triggers that might be causing those symptoms. And that's a whole other conversation we need to have. What can trigger symptoms so you know how to mitigate them and deal with them appropriately. But you can track all of this information. And as we have cohorts of women, thousands and thousands and thousands of women in this app, we can de-identify and anonymize their data so that researchers can look for patterns even among women who are extremely variable from each other. That's the idea, right? So what we've done essentially with the app is we've got about 20 to 30,000 women on the app right now. I don't know for sure because I haven't taken a look at the latest numbers since last week, and we add women, thousands of them every day. So I'm going to say it's probably around 25 as a safe estimate. And that is the largest cohort of women in midlife ever studied for menopause, ever in the history of the world. And so there's real value in looking at all of those things, at all of those women who can be so variable, and sussing out clusters of symptoms so that you can find patterns that make sense, that can direct research around solutions for women and around things that can trigger, just so that you can educate women in a better way.
So you can, through the app basically, so anyone, because I was going to ask you about your app, because I think it's really neat. I took a look at it and I was like, this is really neat, because I'm really big on teaching women to like write down what you're eating, not so much the amount, but what you're eating, the time, and like symptoms. And we can start to correlate. Oh yeah, because so many times we think we eat and we get initial symptoms. It could be literally 8-12 hours later, and then you're actually getting a symptom from what you ate. And that's what a lot of women don't realize. And that's why having like tracking it can be really powerful. So I think that's awesome. So basically what you're doing with this app is you're putting together your own almost type study so that you can start to correlate, okay, we have these women, they've recognized they're eating these types of foods and it's correlating to hot flashes or lack of sleep or insomnia or like different things like that. Is that kind of the overview, the high level of it?
Yeah, exactly. And here's the thing. There are about 40 plus symptoms that we've identified as being something that women can experience in perimenopause and menopause. And we've also identified for every single one of those symptoms, all of the major triggers that can cause those symptoms. And the thing is, they can become cyclical, right? If you're having hot flashes, 5-10 a day, you're feeling a little out of sorts, you start to feel like you just can't focus. That makes your brain fog worse, which then makes your anxiety go up because you're forgetting things. You feel like you can't perform as well at work or whatever the case may be. And then you try to fall asleep at night and your brain is racing because you think you've missed some things and you're obsessing about them. And now you have insomnia, and then you have a night sweat and that wakes you up, and it just cascades and it becomes this vicious little circle. So if we can really identify what kinds of activities cause those cycle symptom triggers, we can negate them, we can mitigate them, we can do so much to better our health. And it's really about giving women the tools they need to take control of their own body and their own health, because nobody in the medical community is doing it for us. We have to take charge.
Yeah, absolutely. And so are you just tracking food, or is it other things like supplements or like different, like what exactly is it tracking? I'm just curious.
It can track so many things. So right now, we just rolled out the beta version actually, and that includes this health tracker where you can track your water intake, your weight, how well you slept the previous night, any symptoms that you're having. As soon as you're having them, you can just go in and easily click a button and say, this symptom is, this severe at this time of day. Bam, 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 you're done. And so you don't have to try to go write it down somewhere. It's just right there at your fingertips. So you can track all of these symptoms. You can track anything that's triggering them. And then you can go into what's called your insights and really suss out patterns for yourself. And you can take those patterns to your doctor right there on your phone and say, look, I'm experiencing this. These are the kinds of triggers I'm having, so that they can help you identify any medical intervention that you might need, because there are some cases in which that's important. And right now we are building into the app different drugs and supplements and that sort of thing that you're taking as well, so that you can be a little more mindful about what's going into your body and understanding how they're impacting you from that side of things.
Yeah, it sounds really neat. I think we can do so much and we just bring more awareness to what's going on. And I mean, everyone that listens know I always talk about everything is connected, right? So many times we think of like, oh, just this symptom is created by this, but it's all so interconnected. So that's really, really neat. So can you share with us like what are some of like big triggers for like say hot flashes or those night sweats? Like, do you know offhand like what some of just like the high level ones are?
Yeah, I sure do. So there are a lot of symptoms that you might not even realize are perimenopause symptoms. And, I've realized that I didn't give the audience some definitions around perimenopause and menopause. And I think that's important. So before we dive into symptoms, I just want to backtrack and make sure everybody's aware of the definitions because there's some confusion out there. So menopause is the 12 consecutive months that a woman goes without having a period. Now, some women go for 12 months without having a period because they're taking birth control or something like that. That's not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about the natural cessation of estrogen in your body and releasing an egg from your ovaries. So and here's the thing, you can be in menopause those 12 consecutive months and then have a period and you're no longer considered in menopause. You're kicked back to that perimenopause transition. So perimenopause is the period of years leading up to menopause where your estrogen levels start to fluctuate. And for some women, those fluctuations can be really severe and spike really high and really low. For some women, it's a little bit of a smoother transition. There's some things going on in a woman's body that are probably aiding her in those smooth transitions, but that's essentially what's going on. So those are the definitions. And then a lot of women like to say that once they've hit that 12-month cycle of not having any periods, that they are in post-menopause. And that's a good way to think of it, although our research partner, his name is Dr. John Cornelis. He's at the University of Arizona studying menopause and women in midlife for about 20 years now. He says there's no such thing as post-menopause. You hit that 12 months of menopause and you're just in menopause for the rest of your life. But I think for women, it's a good way of looking at it and thinking about their overall health. So I don't want to discourage women from using the word postmenopause just because I think there's some value there. But anyway, back to symptoms. So hot flashes are the one that are the symptom that are reported the most by women when they enter perimenopause. And that's because it's something you probably haven't experienced before, right? It's this bubbling up of heat from your inside that sort of radiates out. And that's different from being, in the sun or in a room with a heater on and the heat is radiating inward. It sort of comes from your inside out and it makes you get flushed in certain parts of your body. You start to sweat profusely. You feel like you can't cool off. But there are other symptoms that are probably happening to you earlier than your first hot flash that you don't even know are caused by perimenopause. So for me, I had that irregular period, which was my clue, but you can have things like dry eyes, increased allergies. I had something that I call Menopause Rage, which is these mood swings that you just can't control and you just get angry at everything for no reason. And that wasn't like me at all. I didn't realize until after the fact that that's what was going on. And some of the triggers that can happen around these things. So for hot flashes, caffeine can cause them, wine can cause them. Night sweats are essentially a hot flash that happens when you hopefully are trying to sleep right at night and they wake you up, caused by some of the same things. Stress can cause a hot flash. Tight clothing can cause a hot flash. So lots of different things can cause just a hot flash. Dry eyes and dry skin, crepey skin, vaginal dryness, that can all be caused by estrogen sort of dipping down because estrogen is important for so many system regulations in a woman's body. that we don't really realize. And moisture retention is one of the symptoms that can be impacted by all of this estrogen that sort of cycles in and out and in and out.
No, I think it's so interesting. Do you have any suggestions for those, as you're going through the estrogen, swings and up and downs from a regulating estrogen perspective that you found through your research?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a few key things that I think are important. The first is your diet. You want to try to limit your intake of things like sugar, alcohol, refined carbohydrates. Eat a lot of plants, a lot of healthy fibers. It's the same kind of thing that you hear from your doctor, from nutrition practitioners, health practitioners all the time, is eat foods that have healthy fats, are lots rich in fiber, right? Lots of healthy protein. So that's the first thing. And it's probably the hardest thing given our Western diet. The second thing is exercise. And that's especially difficult these days when a lot of women have desk jobs, right? We're sitting all the time. But if you can get out even for a walk, that's going to be so beneficial for your overall health and maintaining your estrogen levels on a sort of regular basis rather than these peaks and valleys of fluctuations. And the last thing that I think is so interesting, and the reason I started the company, is because your microbiome plays a huge part in regulating your estrogen metabolism. So it's a subsection of your microbiome called the estrobolome, and it is responsible for regulating your estrogen metabolism. It's so critical. So we've developed some probiotics in our company that can help women rebalance their microbiome and take advantage of the estrobolome so that you are deconjugating your estrogen. It's really fascinating. I'm gonna nerd out on some science for a second here.
Yeah, I would love you to, because I love talking about gut. I mean, I think in so many episodes, like we always come back and talk about the gut.
Because it's so important, and we're really just starting to understand its importance to human health. But if you can put the right bacteria into your microbiome, you can take the estrogen that your body would store in fat cells and recycle it. It's called deconjugation. You can recycle it and use it again and again. So it doesn't get stored in your fat cells and it doesn't get passed out in your waste. And if you can do that, you can really help mitigate those estrogen fluctuations. I like to say you go from these roller coasters of, highs and lows to happy little beach waves. Yes, you're still going to have estrogen fluctuations, but they're going to be a nice gradual decline and not this, all over the map, causing hot flashes, causing mood swings, causing anxiety, and the whole host of symptoms that come along with this transition.
Yeah, it's so interesting. So have you guys done specific research related to this and the certain types of probiotics that actually help do all of that for women?
Yeah.
Almost like a
so the way we formulated our products is we work with Dr. Canelis out of the University of Arizona. And he actually is on the patent for one of the probiotics that is in all of our supplements, our probiotic supplements. And our probiotics are a little bit different from what you're going to find on the market, because when we were putting these together, I had been cobbling together like a 28, 32 pill concoction on my own to try to take advantage of the things that I was seeing in my research, the probiotics, phytoestrogens, some prebiotic fibers, just a bunch of stuff. And what I really wanted was a one pill solution, because that's a lot of pills to take every day. So that's why the company was founded, because we came up with a one pill solution where we have prebiotics, phytoestrogens, and patented probiotics that are in these. So they're really symbiotics, right? Because they have more than one kind of ingredient in them. But there is research around them. We get all of our probiotics manufactured from DuPont. Everything is clean manufacturing processes. Everything is certified in FDA certified labs. It's all very natural, very clean. I don't put anything in my body that I don't feel comfortable with. And so that's the way we formulated our products. So yes, there's some research backing them. There are definitely some good manufacturing processes. And it's not easy to put 28 ingredients into.
No, it wouldn't.
And had we known that, COVID was going to hit, we may have formulated things a little bit differently, because it can make your supply chains a little interesting because you've got 28 ingredients rather than 2 or 3. But 28 ingredients is the right thing to do for the customer, for the woman who needs help. And so we will never change that. It's always going to be the best product that we can offer.
Yeah, and they work together, like you said that word, synergistically. And that's really important, because I know like sometimes we'll talk about like this nutrient and that nutrient, but ultimately it is, again, everything working together, the food we eat, the supplements we take, all of it really, really works hand in hand together.
Exactly. And if you're taking a probiotic, and it doesn't matter if it's ours or someone else's, you want to take a look at what kinds of fibers will help feed those probiotics so that they can propagate easier in your gut, so that they have a better chance at, making a colony and really impacting you and having beneficial health outcomes for you, because that's why you take them, right? So if you can give them the right fibers and the right kinds of foods that they need, that's really important. And if you're taking a probiotic and you're eating sugar or drinking alcohol, you're doing a lot of damage to those beneficial bacteria. So be aware of that as well.
Yeah. And sugar, we know, leads to inflammation, and alcohol actually can tear kind of away. We talk about like leaky gut and stuff like that. It actually can contribute to that, which I know is really hard because everyone loves their wine. But it's just the way it is. So we just have to make these choices, right? It's like the pros and cons of our choices. And so maybe if you're going to drink wine, you really work hard to, minimize and cut the other sugars in your life, and just, we got to balance that. So Vanessa, I did have a question I wanted to ask you, because I know like what you're talking about is more for helping to regulate estrogens during perimenopause, and women can have these up and down swings. What about once we get into menopause? Because we should have I know like everything plummets, but we should have just like a littlest bit of hormones in our body. So some women have like none, like zilch. They just like absolutely completely disappear. So do you find that this synergistic balance actually can be really helpful for women in menopause so that we don't completely hit rock bottom?
Yes, absolutely. And here's the reason why and I think a lot of women just aren't educated around early enough. When you hit menopause, you really need to be concerned about osteoporosis and heart disease. Now, the research that our research partner, Dr. Canillas, has done indicates that the probiotics we have in our formulas will help heart health for women in this period of their life in menopause. He's done some studies that show that the scarring on a heart after a heart attack is reduced 50% when these probiotics are part of the equation. That's incredible, because heart disease is the #1 cause of death for women. Everybody always thinks, oh yeah, heart disease in men. They make this correlation because we talk about it so much in society, in the news media, but it's really a more primary concern for women. And the other thing is osteoporosis, right? Our bones start to get spongy. And if you're taking probiotics and phytoestrogens, you're going to help your bones be able to produce the kind of bone forming tissue that you need for longer. So absolutely, there are benefits. Now, there are not as many symptoms associated once you're in menopause and post-menopause. because those estrogen fluctuations are not as wild, right? So, but you still need to be thinking about your heart health and your bone health. And that's where these products can come in and absolutely help you. But that's the other thing is, for your heart health and your bone health, eating properly and exercising are so critical because they're going to help keep your heart in shape. And if you can do any exercise that like stretches the muscles across your bones, you're going to help your bone tissue remain stronger longer.
Yeah, it's the fascial lengthening, which is what I teach.
Exactly. Yeah.
Give your body the support it needs and the space between the bones and all of it's so important. And I would love to ask a question, and you may not know the answer to this, but this is something that's always intrigued me and all my pulling together research about fascia and bones. So bones, and this is where like this whole calcium conversation, I don't know if you know much, and if you don't, that's okay. But it's something that I would love to have someone talk about if you don't know either. But okay, if we look at the matrix of bone, it's actually the collagen matrix. It has way more collagen in it than it does calcium. Calcium, yes, is an important mineral, but I feel like we put way too much weight on the importance of calcium and not as much importance of like collagen. And that's where like impact, going for walks, doing strength training, for those that can handle it with their pelvic floor, having like a little light rebounder, as long as there's no pelvic floor dysfunction. That's a really big key thing. Like I have a vibrating plate back there that I always do and my clients do. And like vibration is one of the best things to help encourage that collagen matrix. So I don't know if you have anything to add there with the bone health, but I know like a lot of women get fixated on the calcium. We have to be careful with calcium because I also see women get too much calcium, and then that's when you can start to get calcification build up in your arteries and stuff like that. So like there's just like this fine balance, right? Even the healthiest of healthiest things out of moderation are not healthy anymore.
Right, exactly. So yes, collagen is important, and I think a lot of women don't understand that if you don't have vitamin D and vitamin K, now I might be getting those confused. I just took a vacation for a few days.
Well, you need a little, so
my brain's coming back to speed.
Yeah. So the whole thing with vitamin D and K, right? So I always tell with clients, like in a multivitamin, many times you'll have some D and a little bit of K. So as long as you're getting a little bit of K, because that helps so that the D, because if you just took D, that can kind of leach some of the calcium out of your bones. And then, because we've got a balance, it's all this balance, right?
Exactly.
That's why having a little bit of K is important. I don't think you also want to make sure you don't overdo K. So I always am like, if you take a multivitamin or a supplement that has K in it, then you probably just need to add a D supplement. But if you're not getting vitamin K in really anything, then you should take some D with K, because that's really important. But it's the balance of
exactly.
minerals,
You
right?
Absolutely right. Yeah. You absolutely need to. I think everything is a question of moderation and balance, really, at the end of the day.
It really is, yeah.
But if you're just taking calcium and you're not supplementing with D and K, you're not doing yourself any favors, right? You need D and K in order to absorb the calcium properly, and you absolutely need to think about collagen. And collagen does a lot for you. And I think a lot of women think about it, oh, it's going to help benefit my skin, right? They know about collagen loss causing wrinkles. That's all over the beauty industry. They talk about it a lot, and deservedly so. It is something that does cause wrinkles, is the loss of collagen. So, but I think it's important to remember that you need it for your hair, you need it for your nails, you need it for so many things in your body, not just to combat your fine lines. So it's, collagen is not a beauty product. Collagen is a health product.
Yeah, and it's one that I always highly recommend, and always make sure with collagen, talking about synergy, there we go, between the two is making sure that you've got vitamin C. And I know there's certain brands that have vitamin C in collagen. I always think it's good to add in some extra vitamin C from time to time, because I just think it's so important. Vitamin C is one of those, along with like magnesium, that we need for so many systems of the body. And I've done some research, actually have an episode on here a long time ago. I dug up a bunch of research about vitamin C. And a lot of people, it's like, I don't remember the percentage of, but huge percentage of people in America don't have enough vitamin C, and that actually can lead to gut issues. So it's like, again, this balance of just, again, when we have a good diet, we cut the sugar out, we fill in the gaps with the needed, supplements. And that's how we need to look at supplements too, is like, not like, oh, I'm taking these, so I don't need to eat this way. It's like, no, we still need to eat this way. And then we're filling in the gaps so that we can help minimize symptoms, help us to ultimately have just, be as healthy as we can be. So.
Absolutely. And we do have to think about mitigating the impacts of a Western diet on our health, because there's so much refined flour and carbohydrates, and there's so much sugar. Just in everyday products that we think are healthy. We go to the supermarket and we buy a prepackaged salad. Well, you put the dressing on and now you're 700 calories in, and it's a salad, right? There's just a lot of things in our Western diet that we're not aware of all the sugar we're consuming. We're not aware of all of the really gut impacting foods that we eat. So I think the more we can educate ourselves around the importance of our gut health, the better.
I couldn't agree more with that statement. Okay, so Vanessa, I want to ask, because this is something that gets asked quite often and comes up because I talk so much about pelvic floor. And for women, going in that perimenopausal state, and then especially once they hit menopause, is the vaginal dryness, the low libido. Like, what insights or suggestions or tips do you have for our ladies out there that are dealing with that? And the second part to that is like, as women, can like work to maybe prevent some of that, minimize it as they are heading into menopause?
Yeah, absolutely. The first thing you need to do is make sure you're having an honest conversation with your partner, right? Because if we can't be open about what's happening to our bodies, and that includes everything, that includes the mood swings, the anxiety, the hot flashes, and the loss of libido and vaginal dryness. If we can't have that conversation, hey, this is what's happening in my body, and you need to be aware of it, it makes all the other conversations even harder to have, right? So if you're experiencing some pain with intercourse or whatever the case may be, if your partner's not prepared for that conversation and it feels like it came out of left field, it can feel like a slight to them. These are things I talk with women about on a daily basis, and they've all given me some really fantastic insights into, hey, it's so important to be honest with your partner about all of it. But the other thing is, yes, there's going to be dryness. That's just a fact. Make sure that you find some lubricants out there that work for you. If you're still concerned about pregnancy or sexually transmitted diseases, make sure the lubricant you choose works with your birth control. And don't be afraid to experiment, to get yourself aroused ahead of time, because it might take a little longer, and that's okay. It's totally fine if you need to take a few minutes ahead of schedule before you even engage with your partner to make sure that you're ready for intercourse. And do the exercises. Those are so important. Make sure you're taking supplements, and don't be afraid or embarrassed to talk to your partner about what's going on, because the fact is your partner will probably want to help you solve that problem in some really fun and creative ways.
Absolutely. So it can help to strengthen your relationship, right? So I think communication is so important in any relationship. And so use it as an opportunity to open up more, even if you maybe haven't in the past. Like I'm always of the belief, like we can change and improve anything with our health. And I look at relationships, especially, a intimate relationship, as a very important part of our health. Like, that whole area of our life that we don't, again, talk about probably near as often as it needs to be talked about, but it could open up an opportunity to get to like even understand each other on a whole new level. So
Absolutely.
amazing opportunity that's probably there for a lot of women.
Yes. And the other thing I would say is, I was talking with a woman when we first started researching, what were the options out there for women, and what was the missing piece. I was talking with a woman who told me she was having this menopause rage, and she still had children at home, and she was finding herself really yelling at them in ways that she never would have done a few years before, and maybe it was because they were teenagers now and she wasn't quite sure, right? Her husband was driving her crazy, and she just felt so much anger and confusion, and she of course blamed herself. And she said, I'm pretty sure my husband's going to leave me, and I don't blame him. I hate myself. And I think what a lot of women are not prepared for is just how much these perimenopause symptoms can impact their relationships. They impact your career trajectory, but your relationship can really suffer if you don't understand what's happening to you, and you don't have some tools to help you manage them, and if you're not honest with your partner about what's happening. Now, I'm happy to say that this woman, I'm still friends with her a year and a half, 2 years later, and this January they renewed their wedding vows. So we were able to help her find some coping mechanisms. She takes some of our probiotics. She uses the app. She's part of our conversation, really understanding what's happening to her body. And I'm really, really proud of that outcome. And I hear thousands of stories like that.
I think that's really common. And it is also, I think, a little bit in the early postpartum stages of women having babies because of, again, it's hormonal shifts. And I think there's this big, like you opened up something that I would love to talk about if you're open to right now, because I think this is a piece, again, where and I always talk about awareness, right? Awareness is the first piece. And so if women can just start to recognize like that feeling of like, I'm not being myself, like what the heck is going on here? Like, and you can have that first awareness piece. And I think honestly, having a conversation with your significant other and explaining those things versus it conjuring in your head, because when we don't open up and talk to our spouse about something, then we like take all the burden on ourselves, or we conjure up this big whatever in our head, and then he says something or whatever, and then you bounce off of it, and it's like it just gets worse. Versus if you had just like, very just calmly brought up like, hey, I feel like a crazy person today and I don't feel like myself. And like, I think so many times like men, and they are more, we talk about like men and their cycles are like 24 hours and women's cycles are, 28-ish days. And then of course your perimenopause are all over the place, right? So when we really start to like actually recognize and know, we know men and women are different, but the thought process, right? Like their actual thinking in their brain, they think very differently than women do. And I think so many times women just like, we try to suck it up and shove it on inside and keep going. And honestly, that's the opposite of what women are doing, because she probably felt a heck of a lot better if she started talking and opening up that communication, right? Even though it's really hard sometimes.
Yeah. Well, we've had a lot of conversations since that first conversation. And what she told me was her husband, told her over the course of her conversations with him and really trying to be open about what was happening to her. He said, well, I'm relieved to hear that this is hormonally driven, because I thought you didn't love me anymore. I thought you wanted out. And he wasn't willing to have that conversation because he was afraid to have that conversation. So, there was just a lot of miscommunication happening. And it really does mean that as these things are happening, we've got to be honest with ourselves and with each other. And I think part of what we need to do when we're being honest with ourselves is to recognize that perimenopause is natural, that menopause is not this thing that happens to women when they're old, right? In their 60s, and they have gray hair and they're going to have some hot flashes and, oh, that's menopause. That's not the case. Perimenopause is the transition that you really need to be concerned with. And for the average woman, that starts at 44. The average woman will go through perimenopause for 7 years, and she will hit her menopause, that 12 consecutive months without a period, at 51. But for some women, perimenopause can last for 13 years. So if we can't be honest with ourselves about, yes, this is the stage of life I'm in now, that we're not doing ourselves any favors.
Yeah, absolutely. And to know that there are so many things you can do, which we talked about a lot of them today. So even thinking, oh my gosh, this could last a long time, it doesn't have to be torture and tormenting. And, there's lots why I do the functional lab work for clients, because I'm like, when we actually can look at the gut biome and see what's in there too, and look at what's going on with hormones, the Dutch test and stuff like that. Like that's just a whole deeper, I know that's not accessible to everybody. Which is why I love everything that you are doing. But for those that are interested and can go on that deeper level, I think that can be really eye-opening. And one other thing I want to ask you about was, you said that, the age, like average is, or you said the average is 44, which means that there are, because I actually know quite a few women who have actually hit menopause in their 30s. And that to me is like, it's too young. And so if you start noticing this stuff younger, or for women who are still at that age of they wanting to have children, right? Like really getting and looking at your gut biome and hormones and all of that stuff, much younger than we typically think, right? You think like, oh, this is not going to hit me till I'm 50. So yeah, you may not hit menopause till 50, but what's been going on the previous 10 to 15 years? And there's just so many things out there, but there's also so many things that you can do about it. So that's what I always like to encourage everybody.
Absolutely. Well, I guess I would say, when you talk about women going into menopause in their 30s, yeah, that is happening. I think it's an impact of our Western diet again, and the fact that we have sort of cut our microbiome off at the heels in some ways. And there are a significant amount of women who go into early menopause through surgical intervention, like chemotherapy, medical intervention. So it can be chemotherapy or surgical, like a hysterectomy. That's what happened to my mother in her mid-30s. She had a hysterectomy, and bam, you're in menopause, right? And that can be a really scary thing for women, especially when you think of menopause as being something that happens to an older woman. So I would say, in your mid-30s is when you should start taking preventative measures, really starting to think about what your health will look like in perimenopause, because it's probably, your estrogen is probably already fluctuating. Technically if you were to get pregnant, it would be a geriatric pregnancy. I hate that term, but
it's what it's called. It's crazy. Yeah, we talk about that because I have a prenatal program, and so we that comes up a lot. But you know what? I will tell any women that are 35 or older wanting to have even their first baby, it can be amazing. We have a lot of women 35 and up having amazing pregnancies, amazing births, and everything goes great. And when I lived in California, when teaching Pilates one-on-one with clients, I had a lot of clients in early 40s having their first baby, right? So it's, so it is all possible.
It is. And, I don't want to scare women about this perimenopause transition, because there is so much that you can do to mitigate the impact of symptoms on your life. And the first thing you can do is to just start, researching, finding out what you can expect. what kinds of things can happen, and go from there.
Absolutely. Well, Vanessa, this has been amazing. Do you have anything that you'd like to add that we haven't talked about today? Any last tips or tricks to share with our ladies?
I actually do. So my co-founder, Danielle Jacobs, and I wrote a book called How to Master Menopause, and it's on Amazon and has a 4-star rating on Amazon. But I have it as a free PDF download for anyone who listens to your show and just wants to educate themselves around around the 6 most common symptoms and what you can do to get ahead of them, and what you can do if you're having them right now to take action on them immediately. And so we have that as a free book offer. If folks just want to go to menolabs.com/core connections, they will find it there.
And we'll put that in the links, and then I'll put all the links to where they can find you. I know your website's menolabs.com, easy to find you. Yeah, Vanessa, this is so wonderful. So thank you so much for sharing all this amazing information today.
It was my pleasure. Thanks for having me, Erica.